tell you something, brother. When I'm working on my 24-inch pythons, dude, I'm listening to Let's Find Out with Diego. Train, say your prayers, and listen to Let's Find Out with Diego. Ooh, what you gonna do, brother, when Let's Find Out with Diego runs wild on you?
Are you curious about the unknown, the unexplainable? Do you find yourself intrigued by the mysterious and paranormal side of our world? Join us on an adventure into the world of inexplicable discoveries and investigations that may someday give us the final answer as to what may be behind the veil of reality. The borders of space and time have opened once again, and transmitting from the mountains of West Virginia, it's time once again for Let's Find Out with Diego. The universe is waiting for you.
The borders of space and time have opened once again, and transmitting from the mountains of West Virginia. It's another episode of Let's Find Out with Diego. Thank you for taking this journey with me on this episode of Let's Find Out. Since a young age, our guest has been on a quest to unravel mysteries that have captured the imagination of people across the globe. With an insatiable curiosity for history, mythology, and folklore, he has embarked on a thrilling journey to document the wonders that lie hidden within the fabric of our world. His YouTube channel, the Fedora Files, he delves into the depths of the unknown, sharing captivating insights that will ignite your sense of wonder and expand your horizons. Prepare to be enthralled as he leads you on a riveting exploration of the mysterious world within our own, leaving you with a mind buzzing with newfound knowledge and excitement for all the adventures that await. All this plus more. Please welcome back author, explorer, podcaster, and good friend to our show, Gregory Fedora. Gregory, my friend, welcome back to Let's Find Out.
Oh, I'm so happy to be back, man. I'm excited. We have so much fun every time we hook up and start yapping, man. So, and I'm excited about the topic you want to get into.
Yeah, me too. Because it's been, now the show's going into its third year, and I don't think I've touched on this topic quite yet. But before we get into that, I saw you earlier this year, and we always have great conversations. And it's always a pleasure talking to you because I always feel like I learned something from you, not only about the folklore and the mythology and whatnot, but also about, being a vendor at these events, because I had no clue what I was doing. And you kind of just say, hey, you showed me the ropes a little bit on that. So I really appreciate that. And no, I mean, ever since then, man, I've been telling a lot of people about your stuff, and it's always a learning experience, my friend, of course.
Oh, cool. Well, cool. Thank you. Yeah, it's always fun. Like, it's fun to hang out and meet with you, especially if you got, this subject matter. It's so much fun, and it's just fun to talk to people. And whether people believe everything or they just like the stories, or just, I think all of it. I welcome everybody, whether that they're believers in these paranormal things or they just like the stories and the tales. And for me, I think if you keeping the tales around is really important, because that's one of the things, like storytelling, we're kind of losing that, that whole genre. We're like, there's so many TikToks and that, and nothing against those, because you can use those to tell stories, but people are forgetting these old tales of monsters and ghosts and all these things. And when you talk about certain animal creatures, people are like, what? Really? I've never heard of that. And it's and this thing's been around 200-300. Some of these that we're going to talk about today have been around thousands of years. And people haven't heard of them. And to me, that's sad, because eventually we could lose these stories. And I think those stories actually help shape society. And you can actually see that in the artwork and all these things around the world. And should I spill the beans what we're going to talk about?
Oh, we're going to get into it in a few seconds, because
but the artwork of these creatures and others are all over the place, in cave drawings, on knight shields, on Viking things, on Aztec things, on Mayan. There's all these things, and they're very similar. And to me, there had to be something that spurred these ideas on all these different like continents and all these different people groups. And so something was out there. And you know, there's been recent discoveries of creatures that people thought were gone, and no, they're back. And so, and I'll point those out as we go, because some of those were pretty cool, you know. But yeah.
You know, it's true, because this is my opinion. Maybe you share the same opinion or not. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but when going to these events and people start talking about your books or the podcast or what have you,
Mhm.
a lot of people ask questions because maybe they don't believe, but they want to believe,
Mhm.
and they just want that piece of information so they themselves can do some research. And with all type of folklore and stories, there's always some sort of lesson at the end of it. So
Yeah.
so it's worth the effort to investigate and read about these
Yeah.
legends. But let me get into it, because I was writing down my notes and I say, you're kind of like Christmas morning, Mr.
Mhm.
Fedora, because when you open gifts on Christmas morning, they're all different types of gifts. And sometimes you bring a little Bigfoot, a little Sleepy Hollow, a little Atlantis on your YouTube channel. And I love how you mixed up all these topics. The channel's a fun and educational experience.
Mhm.
And I'll say this, and I'm going to set it up because I'm dying to talk about the subject. When I was a kid, it's a little backstory. There used to be this show on UHF channel, and for those who don't have TVs like we used to have, it's had a couple of dials, and if you move the dial, then there's another dial below it.
Mhm.
You get these UHF channels, and you might get some really cool stuff. Now, there was one channel out of Baltimore, and I don't know if you've been in this area long or not, but when I was in the Nova kid, there was this kid's cartoons where there was a host, and in between he does his act, and then they show the cartoons every once in a while. And the show was hosted by a character called Captain Chesapeake,
Mhm.
and his sidekick was a lake or a river serpent. It's called Mondi or Mundi, is the way it might
Mhm.
be pronounced. So you did an episode not long ago, and this is a subject we're going to touch on with river monsters or
Mhm.
things like the Nessie. But you talked about Chessie, and I'm thinking that's where the idea of the Captain Chesapeake, that serpent, came from.
Yeah.
Um, where did the story of Chessie originate from? And I know we're talking about the Chesapeake, but for those who don't live on our side of the world, give us a little backstory on that.
Now, yeah, Chessie's an interesting creature. Um, I I kind of stayed away from Chessie for a while just because some of the story, and like if you saw the video I did on it, um, he the the creature had I guess some of the stories behind it are kind of goofy, but Chessie, it goes back. I think the original one goes back about 100 years. Somebody saw something, and in my video, I didn't really go into that. But then he kind of, or he or she, depending on who you talk to, had a re re resurgence of popularity. And then in like I guess I'm trying to think. I think it's about like 1930s. There was a sighting of the creature, uh, and it was a fisherman saw it, and and he described it as being a big 25, 30 foot long serpent type thing in the Chesapeake Bay. Kind of, there's a river there. I'm trying to think, what's it called? Trying to remember the name of the river that goes into the Chesapeake where it's seen a lot. It's like, it's the Bush River, like the president. That's right. So, seen the Bush River. Like one of the stories is they said like in 1936 a helicopter flew over Bush River and saw it. The problem was that helicopters weren't really around until 1939, so that might have been a plane saw it and someone screwed up and said that it was a helicopter. Then in the 1940s, some other people saw it, and in the 70s, and people still today claim that they come across Chessie, the sea monster, and it's basically the description is very similar to Loch Ness. Like so, it's kind of like a plesiosaur type of creature, But the interesting thing about this is, unlike the lock, although people claim there are these holes in locks that go out to the sea, but they haven't really been able to explore them because they're like 700 feet down. So with the Chesapeake, it opens up to the Atlantic. So that's a big ocean. The ocean's huge.
Yeah.
And so this creature could be going out into the ocean and then coming back in. Whether it's or not, I've never seen it. I know every couple years people see Chessie again or something. I know right now Loch Ness is getting a big resurgence because a lot of video and photos that have come. And so much so that even Josh Gates on Expedition X sent a team to go find it. And they found some interesting evidence, but again, they didn't catch it. But there were some interesting things they ran into. But like, yeah, Chessie's kind of like Maryland's Loch Ness monster. And he's cool, but like I said, there's not a whole lot of physical evidence. I think they found some footprints on the shore. Again, what that was, I don't know. But like I said, like I held off on Chessie for a while simply because I was like looking up the different things, and like I said, some of the stories I was like, well, there's no way that's true, like parts of it. But then I thought, well, maybe there was instead of a helicopter, maybe it was an airplane and someone just called it a helicopter. So I gave it the benefit of the doubt on that. But in my podcast, I kind of made fun of the fact that they said it was a helicopter. And so I like to try and point out like when stories go a little awry and say, okay, people are claiming this, but this part, there's no way this is true. But we have this and that. And so, but yeah, so, and I did that with that's interesting. Like I wrote that podcast and I had a different person do the podcast because I had lost my voice that week. And I even made fun of myself in that podcast for not being there, saying that I was too afraid to talk about Chessie. But I had it planned that I was going to do it, but then I had gotten sick, and so Montgomery came in and did the podcast for me.
Oh, he did a fine job though.
Yeah,
Very well spoken. It sounded very
Yeah.
like masterpiece theater-ish.
Yeah. That was the whole idea. He may be back someday. I don't like to have other people come do my podcast, but I really wanted to get out, and I was like, dang it, I had missed 2 weeks already, and I was like, I can't go a third week without something. So I was like, this has to happen. So
Yeah, I don't like to miss podcasts either. I'm thinking if I ever do, I did it early this year. I had COVID. I still powered through it, but man, I was miserable during the whole time. The guest was talking. I was just lost and thankful. I take notes on the side. I should have pen and paper on the side, or I would have been lost.
Yeah.
So no, you did a great job. But ever since, because this is the first time I've heard of Chessie. Has there been anything current on that one?
I'm trying to think. The most recent, actually, I think that was in 2014. There might have been an even more recent one, but that was the most recent one I found was 2014. And I think that I have a friend who lives in Baltimore and near the Chesapeake Bay, and he was telling me that he had heard that there was a sighting in 2020 during COVID. Some guys went out fishing and they claimed that they were fishing, and whatever it did, it took their lines and snapped them, and they had big like tuna lines. Like, so if you've never been fishing, like what a tuna, like the lines that you do for tuna can pretty much pull in like 500-pound things. Like they're, because you're trying, like tuna, big fighters, I guess. And whatever that snagged its line snapped it. And they claimed that they could see something underwater and didn't look like a shark, and it snapped. And that was in 2020. But then again, that was kind of hearsay from my friend who I do trust, but I didn't hear it from them. And they didn't report it to anybody. They just were like, yeah, man, we were out there, so, like if I can't find it, like in somewhere, like the 2014, there actually was like the people reported it, and you could, like, if you research it, you can find it. Like, some people saw it near Bush River, which is kind of where it, like, is known to be hanging out. But yeah, so Chessie's a cool one. That another really cool one that you've probably seen on me talked about a couple times is a Normie, the Lake Norman monster, uh, which is down in North Carolina. And that one's really cool because there again, that's it's a huge lake, and it's a man-made lake, and that's what makes this thing really bizarre. That this thing, and people continue to see it every year. There's sightings of whatever this is, and the interesting, weird thing about this lake, uh, it's the largest man-made lake in North Carolina. But as soon as they made it, they dammed up this river, and it created the lake. They had freshwater jellyfish just show up, and like, just weirdly, they were there. Another thing was alligators showed up, and people are like, well, there's alligators in North Carolina. Yeah, in southern North Carolina, close to South Carolina. Yeah, but this is pretty inland. For the alligators to get there, it's a trek. And how they got there, maybe someone brought them and dumped them, I don't know, but there's been a few alligator sightings. So there's also supposedly, because there was a cemetery in the area that got flooded, there's been paranormal talks, but then all of a sudden Normie shows up. And what Normie is, we don't know, but people see it every year. And there's a guy down there, and I'll kind of throw him out there, as a Spooky CLT on Instagram. If you want to go check his stuff out, every year he does a huge Lake Norman festival kind of thing, where it's like a get together and they tell the stories. And so that's another cool one in the United States. And there's also Old Greenie up in North New York, is another lake monster we have, which is very similar. They're all very similar to Loch Ness, kind of like they're serpent-like with fins. And Loch Ness is really cool because, I mean, that's the, Nessie's the first and foremost lake or sea monster people know about. Like, when you talk about those, everyone talks about Loch Ness, and Nessie gets a lot of play. But the cool thing about Nessie is, like, there were stories about it. The Pikes had stories over there in Scotland, but Saint Columba was the first person to write it down. And what's interesting about that is, this guy, if you want to research Saint Columba, he was a rough and tumble dude, man. He was kicked out of Ireland for burning down some monasteries because he thought the church was not helping the needs of the people, and he thought the monks were making money, so he burned down their monasteries. And so he gets sent to Scotland.
That'll show him something.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you read his life story, you're like, this dude was like, I mean, how he became a saint, I don't know, but he was a pretty cool guy. Like, he stuck up for the little people. But he gets to Scotland, and he's dealing with the Pikes, who are pagan, and they're pretty rough dudes, but they respect this guy because he's by the loch, and one of his guys gets attacked by the Loch Ness monster, and he goes down and says a prayer and says, you got to go, and God, by the power of God, and the monster runs away and leaves. And the Pikes see this, and because of that, they convert. So what happened, I don't know, but I find it interesting that he wrote it down, and other people wrote it down too, but he never made any financial thing over it. And it kind of got lost in time for a while. But the whole Christianity in Scotland was because of this guy, because he fought a sea monster and it ran away. He gained the respect of these warriors. So it's something happened, because they aren't going to just be like, yeah, we're going to become Catholic now. Something happened that they saw something, and it's like, what it was, I don't know, but something was there, and he took it on. And so that's interesting.
Yeah, so sort of, I guess that could be defined as a miracle in his time.
Yeah, that's one of his. He has a few miracles, and they're all very, very interesting. Like, I looked him up after I started looking into the Loch Ness, because I was like, oh, okay, so this is why. And then I was like, which then made me be like, well, something's got to have been there at least at some point. But now, like I said, there's all this new video evidence and photography that I'm like, okay, something's going on there. And what it is, I'd love to go there and check it out, go for a swim, see if I can find it, use myself as bait, kind of like, the Scooby-Doo team did. They'd always like make Daphne the bait, and I'll put a red wig on, whatever.
Well, you might get chased by more than just a serpent, but anyway,
Yeah.
that's another story for
That's a different
for
show.
another day. But
Yeah.
that is a whole different show. And
Yeah.
I'll touch on something you mentioned earlier about the Carolina, where
Yeah.
all these things that weren't there before in lakes. You have alligators and freshwater jellyfish and all these other things. And that maybe perhaps somebody introduced something that's not natural to that environment.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember back in the early 2000s when there was this thing of, it was some sort of Japanese fish. It was a very large fish.
Oh yeah,
And I think somebody
fish or something. I don't remember what it's called, but it can crawl out of the water, right?
Right. And I'm thinking that perhaps, even back then, I think they were the local, I want to say park police or law enforcement, but they were offering people a reward to capture these things and kill them because,
because they're like detrimental and they're like doing stuff. Yeah,
and so maybe it's because, so let's say a regular Joe Lunchpail guy like myself who's not very well experienced in the woods or in the lakes or sees something like that, especially if this fish is walking on land and causing me all sorts of grief, I'm going to perceive this as being some sort of a lake monster or something. Is this maybe a lot of these things maybe misidentified things that perhaps already been there?
Yeah, they may be. Like I said, I know that also, like pikes. If you've ever seen a pike, those things are those are wicked scary looking. And there are freshwater eels, and those can get pretty big as well. And so if you've never seen one, I mean, that's a sea serpent. I mean, those things can get up to 6-7 feet long. And I believe they're similar to, like, whatever area they're in, they grow as big. So like you can get eels and have in an aquarium and they're like little, like 6-7 inches, but you take that out and put it in a lake, it's going to grow like 6 feet long. Those things will continue to grow to like whatever size they're in. But so that's possible. And like I said, pikes can freak you out. And also, like I said, they've caught alligators in Lake Norman. And the first couple times that one of those showed up, you're not expecting to see an alligator in that area. So it could have been one of those. I mean, who knows what they saw? But they saw something, and I don't say, I don't make fun of people who say they see something. I'm like, all right, tell me what you saw, man. And I think most folklore and folk monsters, people experienced or saw something that may not be what they say it was, but something was there, and it wigged them out to the point that they got away with it. But I also think I'm one of these, and I'm probably on the end that a lot of people are like, oh, that's impossible. But I kind of believe that not all the dinosaurs died out when they said they did. I think they got smaller than they were just because of the environment and people hunting them and stuff, so they weren't huge anymore. But I think that especially like water dinosaurs could have evaded the humans for a long time. Sharks were prehistoric and they're still around. They're just not as big as they were. But and same with alligators. They were kind of prehistoric as well. They've been around for a long time as well. But like the dinosaurs, like if you look at like the drawings of like in medieval times, as well as like Aztec, Mayan, Egyptians, they all have these pictures of these creatures, and now we have skeletons that fit these creatures. Like people were describing, like in the pikes were describing Loch Ness before we knew what a plesiosaur was, but their description was a plesiosaur, and the Romans ran into things. The Vikings claim to run into things, and when they describe them, like, oh, we know them now as these dinosaur names, but they didn't know them as that. They called them dragons. And I know that people get all mad, like, yeah, they're dragons, blah blah. It's like, dude, dinosaur is a fairly new term. It's only been around like a little over 100 years, maybe almost 200 years. Um, Dragon's been around a long time. Whether they saw a dragon or found skeletons of these things and just were like, okay, that's a dragon. You know, I don't know what they saw or ran into, but I also think they did run into something. Um, I don't think you have all these tales of these people, and it's really interesting. Like, for instance, like Plato, people are like, Plato, genius, did all these things, and then you read some of his stories, he talks about crazy monsters and stuff, but we don't believe that part of his story. We believe this part. It's like, well, where do you differentiate? Because at no point does he say, this is a story. He's like, and then this happened, blah blah blah, and this is why the sun does this. And it's like, and it's and they're like, well, we believe the sun part, not this part, you know. And so it's interesting, you know, and we kind of do that. Like, same with like when people are like the Mayan calendar, blah blah blah. We believe it's this, and they're so accurate on the stars and this, and they believe that there are dragons. But we don't believe that part, you know, and they believed in sea monsters, but we don't believe that. But we believe, man, they knew mathematics like crazy. It's like, so we, you know, we kind of pick and choose what parts we like. And an interesting, like another famous sea creature is the Leviathan. And people talk about Leviathan, and the Leviathan's mentioned in the Bible, whether you believe the Bible or not. It's mentioned and it's detailed and it describes it, and it's a sea monster. And people try and say, oh, it's an alligator. But when you read its description, you're like, that's no alligator. You know, it talks about not being able to kill it with a sword or a spear. And it's like, you can kill an alligator with a sword or a spear. You know,
Yeah.
that's not difficult. But this thing, whatever it was pretty tough. It came out of the water and it was dangerous, and people were afraid of it. And, you know,
No, because you bring up Leviathan. Sorry, I started thinking about Norse mythology, talking about the world serpent.
yeah,
So big that it would wrap around the earth, and it actually had to swallow its own tail to make room for
yeah,
itself around the globe. So it's not too far out of the imagination where these things either still there or once
yeah,
lived. I mean, because what the Earth, what is it, 75% water, or maybe
yeah,
more?
yeah. It's huge. Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's, I think it's 70% water, 30% land.
And so
And
we can't say for sure what's in the ocean.
yeah, well, I mean, that's like I mentioned earlier. There's the coelacanth. I think that's how you say it. And it was this fish. And it's a real. If you've ever look it up, look it up. It's the weirdest looking fish in the world. This thing was supposed to be, according to science and according to everybody, had been extinct for 50 million years. And then they caught one, uh, like 20 years ago. They caught one off the coast of Japan. Then they caught another one 5 years later, and now they've caught in like 5 or 6 of these things. So now they're like, oh, wait a minute, this thing isn't dead. And it's not extinct. It just lives pretty deep, and it's kind of avoiding man, which, you know, it's understandable because we
Mhm.
keep trying to catch it and eat it. So it's like, you know, but it there's something that's been supposedly gone, and no, it's there. And another one is that I find interesting is, and this is not a sea monster, but just goes back to the whole, we hear stories of something and then you find something that actually makes sense of, oh, that's what they were talking about, is the unicorn. People for the longest time like unicorn, and they described it as this like happy, like when we got like nowadays, it's this white horse and it's a beautiful horn and it's magical and beautiful, and it's like, no. But if you go back to some of the old stories of unicorns, they were not happy to see a unicorn. It was a terrifying experience. And then, just I think it was in the past 20 years, they found a skeleton in Siberia of this creature that's related to rhinoceros that has one horn, and they named it the Siberian unicorn. And this thing had one horn coming out of its head, and it was huge and furry and terrifying. And so it's like, you're like, well, maybe that's what they were talking about when they said unicorn. And then over time, we just made it this beautiful thing. So, same thing with sea monsters. What are we seeing? What are people seeing? I mean, people report sea creatures all the time. I mean, the Japanese do it all the time. Like they have the Antarctic Godzilla. That's in my book. I have talked about it in this book. But all my books, I have at least one or two like river or sea or lake monster. But like you have the Antarctic Godzilla was in 1953, and basically it was furry white, but it had like the back things like Godzilla, and it scared these fishermen. They're probably whalers, let's be real. That's what they're after. They're after whale oil. It was the 1950s in Japan. I think Japan still goes after whale oil, but whether you like that or not, that's not the point. The point is, whatever they saw, they hightailed it out of there, and they didn't want to have anything to do with it. So they lost money. You're not going to have people lose their livelihood over something fake.
With a description of these creatures,
Mm-hmm.
and they've been surviving for thousands, perhaps even millions of years, where do you think they go? And I know we talked about maybe some underwater caverns of sorts that they might be finding refuge, or they can go dive even deeper in the waters, which we'll never get, because I think there's these things called, are they called extremophiles?
Yeah.
Where these little fish or germ-like things, they can live in the most interesting conditions. I think even near volcanic locations in the water. So who's to say that these things didn't find a way, or nature helped them with being able to survive these type of environments?
Yeah, true. Like and like I said, it's so vast, and especially there's so many islands that we don't even know about or are uninhabited. When I was young, there was my family went on this trip to the Bahamas, and we were on a sailboat. Like, so it wasn't like a big cruise ship. It was like a small, like 40-foot sailboat, and it was 4 or 5 boats that sailed together, and we stopped at all these islands that nobody was on. And I remember there was this one island that had this grotto, and we swam into it, but at night it would fill with water, so you couldn't get in because the entrance would be underwater, or like whenever the high tide was. But as the waves would come through, it would push out the air through the top holes and make these noises. And it was really cool, eerie sounding. But you have islands like that where you have these hidden caves, and they're uninhabited, and nobody knows, what's going on there. I know that another like interesting sea monster is the Lusca or Lusca, and it's described as being like part shark, part octopus. But it's in the Andros Islands, and they have these blue holes, they're called, and these things, they connect to the ocean from the in the island. There's these blue holes, but then around the outside under the ocean, there's these holes as well, and they're all interconnected. But people are afraid to go in these things because of the Lusca or Lusca. I'm not sure exactly how you say it, but every year when people go searching for these things, people disappear. They don't make it back. Whether they go and maybe they get lost in the cave or the blue hole, or something kills them. But the thing is, when people have gone down, like we know, like Johnny went into this blue hole like 8 hours ago, they go down and they can't find a body. And at some point, you would think either it's going to float to the top, or, someone would go in and and they never find anyone or anything. It's just the person's gone. And, maybe they're not going far enough. I don't know, but something. But there are also octopus, and octopus come, and there are sharks. So, maybe someone saw an octopus and a shark fighting, and they're like, "Oh, it's a Luska." I have no idea, but
I mean,
yeah,
just seeing these creatures, we just terrify somebody, not knowing or never been being that close to one to begin with. And with these creatures, because this is not just, we're talking about Loch Ness, we're talking about Chessie and all the lake monsters on this side of the world, but this is a global thing.
yeah. There's
Kind of like, and I might be wrong on the years, when might have been the 40s or the 50s
mhm.
when they discovered the mountain gorilla. I think it was somewhere in
Yeah, yeah,
Africa.
yeah.
And nobody thought these things existed up until now. We have a picture, and I'm sure, unfortunately, they might have found one dead somewhere and brought it back
Yeah.
with them. So there's a possibility that it's going to take an event like that, where it's not CGI fed like we've seen on Instagram and Facebook all the time of these fakeries and these videos. It's going to take a real deal thing to, here it is right here, just drop it on
there it
somebody's.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of people are like, are skeptic, and that's fine. I mean, I'm skeptic of a lot of things too, but I'm willing to listen to them. But I also think, of all the creatures out there that people talk about, I think sea monsters are probably the most likely to exist somewhere. Like, it wasn't too long ago that they said the giant squid was fake, and that it was they didn't get bigger than 5-6 feet, and now they know, no, those things can get pretty darn big, and they've seen them, and they're they get up, they can get up to 18 to 20 feet. And so then at what point is it become a giant squid? Is it got to be 21 feet? Like, like it used to be like, well, no, they only get 6 feet. Now we know they can get up to 18, 20 feet long. And it's like, okay, that's pretty big. I don't want to run into that. So, and when you like the octopus, that's another interesting, like, how big do those things get? And I don't know, because I know that they can squeeze into tiny little things, but they can look huge and they can blend into anything. I mean, they're a bizarre creature. I mean, that's pretty freaky.
Because we're getting into Kraken territory now.
Yeah, the Kraken. Yeah. What is that? What is the Kraken? Say, people are afraid of it. Like, you don't become afraid of something if nothing ever happened, So, yeah, sure, the stories may have been exaggerated, but at some point, I believe somebody's ship got attacked by something with tentacles, and we also, our mindset of how big these ships were. Like, if you actually see a Viking ship, they're not that big. So, like, let's say a great white runs into a Viking ship, I mean, it could probably take it out if it kept pounding on it, or a whale, or even a giant squid could do some damage to a Viking. Like, when we think of it, oh, the Viking ships holded like 40 people. It's like, it did, but it was like this, like about the size of a school bus, and they weren't. So you gotta like remember these things, and so that's why people are like, oh, how could that sink a ship? It's like, it's not like a cruise ship, you're thinking, we're thinking the wrong way, and so that kind of messes with people's perceptions, which leads to people like, oh, that's why it's fake, but yeah.
And I would say you don't believe until it happens to you, but you don't want to be that person where you're on a
Right.
ship and have tentacles come and drag your ship down either. I don't want to believe it in that way. I want to believe that I want to see it, but not that up close.
Yeah, I want to see the survivor footage of the person who's, I'll witness that. I'm not ready. I don't want to be the one doing the footage, but I love the ocean. I go there all the time, and I go out surfing and paddleboarding, and I like, and I've seen sharks in the water, and and dolphins and manatees. I've never seen an octopus or squid. I think I would actually be more freaked out if I saw an octopus or a squid. Like, yeah, I've seen sharks swim under me, and that was a little uneasy, but I was also like, well, if I can see them, they see me, and they know I'm not food. But like, it gets a little bit more hairy if you're out there and you can't see anything in the water. Then it's a little bit nerve wracking, because you're like, well, I can't see anything. And then what just bumped me? And, that kind of stuff.
No, and I don't go anywhere that's above waist level. Not that
Yeah.
brave, my friend.
Yeah.
And going back to something, because I'm thinking about the sailors back in the day where you just mentioned manatees. Now, was it the manatee that was mistaken for mermaids?
Yeah,
Or was it? Yeah,
yeah,
right?
and that's funny to me. It, like I know Christopher Columbus wrote about them, as well as Ponce de Leon. All these explorers wrote about seeing mermaids, and I always thought it was funny, like because I've seen mermaids, or not mermaids, I've seen manatees, and uh, and I always was like, that must have taken a lot of rum and a lot of being alone on a ship with a bunch of other guys to be like, that's a beautiful mermaid, you know. It's like, or maybe their sense of what beauty was has changed, like when I saw the manatee, I was not thinking, wow, that's pretty cute. That's that I was like, that's pretty cool, and but not cute in the way that I wanted to date it,
No,
or like,
no.
you
I
know,
think
but
between the drinking and the starvation, I guess your eye starts playing tricks on you.
yeah, but it's interesting. Mermaids is another one that they're cross cultural. There's stories of these things. Like even Japan had a mermaid type thing, but it was a little bit different. It was female, but it had a beak, so it was a little bit more freakish. But like the Greeks had stories of mermaids, the Vikings had stories of mermaids, uh, the Aztecs, the Mayans, all of them had these stories of these mermaids. Well, I don't know what they were seeing. Maybe it was manatees again and again, but as far as I know, their manatees are kind of more in the Caribbean, and then there's another one over in the Australia area called the 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 dong or something like Jadong, and it's a way bigger than the American manatee, but and they're very similar. But what they were seeing or witnessing, again, they you know had these stories. But I also think, from my experience in the Bahamas, when those waves were pushing the air through the tide up through the air holes of that grotto, it sounded like eerie voices singing. And that's always been part of what the mermaids were said to do, were like singing, and they were like, what is that? And then lead you right to an island, and you crash your ship and sink it and die, so
Yeah, the sirens, right?
yeah,
They
the
called that
sirens,
too.
yeah, and they're very sirens and mermaids were all intermixed, so you kind of get these stories that blend together. And what was it, what were they dealing with, who or what, who knows. Right.
Eh, You're definitely right. I mean, who knows? And I think with any story, folklore, mythology, there's a kernel of truth in there somewhere. And because if you're going around the globe, every culture has a story that's similar. I think the old term, where there's smoke, there's fire. I think there's
Yeah,
definitely something to all these stories. And then when we're talking about stories, because about a few minutes ago you brought up your book, was it Happy Little Monsters Volume 1?
yeah, and I have volumes 2, 3, and 4 now. Like, I think I'm still working on 5, 6, and 7, but like in this one, there's quite a few. Like I have like the story of the Antarctic Godzilla. Another one is another interesting Scottish uh, lake monster is a font, or it's not Scottish, it's Wales, but it's the Afnak, and I can show you a picture of it. It's that. It looks like a giant beaver
Yeah, it does.
with like a crazy it would tear you up. And that story that goes back, it's a Wales story, and there's actually a lake called Afnak Loch or something, or Loch Afnak. And but it was a story that this monster lived there, and to a point that they were going to sacrifice a girl to her. But it's kind of like the story Pretty Girl Monster, and it kind of gets like, it likes, it's like a Disney princess, it likes her, and then that led to them being able to kill it, and get it out of the area. I don't think they killed it. I think they chased it away, but it fell for the beauty. And so, that's another interesting one. I think let me see if I have the other monster. It may be in a different, well, you got the bunny yep, which is Australia, which is that dude. Like it's a weird looking creature with fangs. So like I said, every continent has these stories of these different river monsters and sea creatures that are like really bizarre, but they all have them, and so something had to be going on, you know. I mean, oh yeah, this one is a famous one. This is the Cabogan, and this was in New Zealand, and this one was in 1974. And again, it was a Japanese fishing ship or a whaler sawed off the coast of New Zealand, and they all they saw was the head pop up, and it was huge, and it freaked them out, and they didn't know what it was, and they called it and I mean, let me tell you what the Cabogan translates to. Is the Cabogan, which is Japanese, and it's called hippo monster. So they described it as a hippo monster. So it was like a mix of a hippo, but it had like horn things and it had red eyes, scared the crap out of them. But the cool, interesting thing was the Japanese left that area. They were afraid of it. They reported it. Well, within 24 hours, the beach near where they had seen it, there were all these bizarre footprints that were not of a known creature in the area. And whatever it was big. And the New Zealand people reported it and had pictures of it, of the footprints. But yeah, so what it was, I don't know. Like it could have been, maybe it was a hippo that escaped from somewhere and it scared them, and maybe like just something was stuck on it. I don't know, but but I like that they called it a hippo monster, and I was like, fun, you know, like you.
No, yeah, because they're pretty. They're kind of cute, but you're not supposed to mess with them.
Yeah, they're like one of the most dangerous creatures in Africa. You know,
Surprisingly enough.
Yeah, they look friendly, and then till they attack you and kill you. Then you're one out of there.
Yeah, it's all fun and games when somebody loses an eye, as the old saying goes.
Exactly.
And for the listeners of Let's Find Out, because you brought up Happy Little Monsters Volume 1, you said you have 4 out now. Is that correct? Are you working on the fifth?
Yeah. Volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4. I don't think I have. And then I also have this other book, and I'm like way over here. So I have Happy Little Monsters Volume 1 and 4, and then I helped my buddy write this one. This is a good book. It's like if you like ghost stories, it's Transcendental Tourist Volume 1. He's working on the other ones, but it's my buddy Chip Stetson. He's been on my show. He's he's a ghost hunter, and he goes around to a bunch of ghost places. And I told him, dude, you need to write your stories down, because he does a lot of research and he debunks things. So this is a off topic, but it's a really good book. But he wrote it. I just sort of helped him design it, and I helped him get it together. And that's why it says the Fedora Files, just simply because I helped him. And then I know you like Bigfoot. I finally did a Bigfoot book, and I think we talked about it before, but it's Sasquatch and Me. And again, this one it's fictional. It's not a legit, because it's basically the story of what if I went and lived with Bigfoot. And so there is like true things about like what researchers say about Bigfoot. I put it in there, but it's kind of more of a fictitious idea of, like we talked about the apes. Like it's like Jane Goodall living with them. This is like me living with Bigfoot and learning from him and him learning from me. And it's like a much more realistic Harry and the Hendersons.
That's all right. We all got to have a little fun every once in a while, right?
Yeah. So that's the only Bigfoot thing I've done, because I tried to stay away from Bigfoot, but then I was like, I gotta do this. But that's off topic from sea monsters, so sorry about that.
Oh no, that's okay. It's all related, man. It's all great information.
Yeah.
A lot of fun to talk about. So with that being said, with the books, where can the listeners find a copy of them? Because I know they can meet you in person, get an autographed copy, as I have.
Yeah.
But if they cannot do that, where can they find these books?
Well, there's a couple ways. Well, one, they're all on Amazon. If you go to Amazon.com and type in the Fedora Files or Gregory Fedora Happy Little Monsters, it'll pop up. and they're all 4 are on there. And like I said, I'm working on 5, 6, and 7. I have them in the works. I'm still researching them and creating the monsters, which is that's part of the fun for me. Is I go and the artwork is all mine. I go and recreate from what I try and do is the original stories, because a lot of times these monsters kind of over time add more and more to the like what or how they looked. So I go back to the first few sightings, because the first few ones, and then I created how they originally said it was, and then eventually like some creatures like the snallygaster went from like this dragon thing with tentacles on its side to tentacles coming out of its mouth. And so I went with the tentacles on the side because that to me is more frightening than out of its mouth. I don't know why, but it is more frightening to me. So I went with that. But then so I try to recreate all those. The other way is if you follow me on Instagram, um, which is G_Fedora, like the hat, underscore crypto, CRYPTO. So that's Instagram at G_Fedora crypto. If you go there, if you want to like direct message me and you want, I can send you a signed copy and you just Venmo me the money and I'll ship it to you. Like, I don't know if people would want that, but if they want to sign one, they could and like, cause I have copies and I can get copies and get them to you. But the easiest way is obviously Amazon.com. You go and you just order the ones you want, and then, get them out. Or like I said, if I'm at an event, come see me and, I just like get them out there and, it's fun to be, meet the people and talk to them and hear their stories,
I still have to finish my collection. So the next time I see you, I'm gonna pick up a couple of more of the volumes. And before we go, my friend,
Yeah.
your YouTube channel. I love your channel. Like I said, what we were talking earlier before the show. What do you got coming up next? You covered a lot of topics, and now you're also delving into interviewing other people as well. So,
Yeah.
what's coming up next? What's the next episode looking like?
Next is your friend who I just talked to, and we talked about his book. I don't want to give it away though. Can I give it away? Or
I think this
Dale?
episode might be
Yeah.
on after it comes on. You go ahead, man.
All right. Well, no. Then I won't say. But yeah, they go to the Fedora Files. If you go, you can listen to me either on Spotify or all the different places. There's you got and you just type in the Fedora Files, and I come up. And same thing if you go to YouTube and type in the Fedora Files, you can get to my YouTube channel. And I have, like I said, I put all the podcasts on there, video versions, but I try and do a couple shorts throughout the month, and I again tell like 1 minute little, and they're little animated shorts, little animated cartoons of the different monsters, and I tell a 1 minute brief story, and I also try and tell like a little spooky story every now and then on Fridays. It's not every Friday, but it's like when I find one that I find really interesting, because ghost stories aren't really my big thing, but when I find one I like, oh yeah, that one's fun. Then I kind of tell the story. I'm working on one. It's taking me some time to do, simply because it's with the hotel that The Shining is based off of. But I have a really bizarre fear of that story, because I saw The Shining when I was way too young, and to this day I've never seen the movie again. I saw it that one time, and it's been burned in my head. And it was to the point that I was so afraid of Jack Nicholson that I wouldn't watch movies with him in it.
Not even the
And
Batman?
no, I did see the Batman, and that was the thing that killed me, because I love Batman. But the thing is, it made the Joker that much more terrifying, because I found Jack Nicholson so frightening, because of The Shining. And so, but now I'm not as wigged out about Jack Nicholson. Like I can watch his stuff now, but he's still like, no matter what he's in, I'm like, that dude is creepy. Just like, he is going to attack you with an axe. I just know it, even if he doesn't. So So, but I still haven't seen The Shining since, and I won't watch it again. I'm not. It like I think I was like 9, and I should not have been watching that movie. So,
No, I had the same
yeah.
experience, but it was with The Exorcist, so I'm not
Oh
relating
yeah.
that either.
Yeah. So I was like, and and it's funny because of my buddy and I, we were 9, we went into his parents' room, we saw his dad had all these movies up top, and they were just, scary movies, and it weren't like that, what you're thinking, but we're like, oh, they're up there, so we couldn't reach them. So we grabbed it and we like put it in, and we're like, this is gonna be great. And then we just sat there like eyes wide for 2 hours, like, what the hell? So, and I don't think I slept that night. I was like, man, yeah, don't ever do that. There you go. So I haven't let my
Not
kids watch that
recommended.
movie
And
either. Yeah.
no, let them get a little bit older. But before we go, we're still on for that field trip, right? I'm
Yeah,
thinking,
man.
I don't know the location, but I think you and I, we're gonna take that one field trip. We're gonna tape it, man. It's gonna be a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
we gotta go. Like, yeah, we gotta figure out when we can do it. It's gotta be one weekend, and we don't want to reveal where we're going, but
No,
or, I
no,
mean,
we're
yeah,
gonna save
we'll
it,
make it a
and we'll do a
surprise.
world premiere. Yeah, and then
Yeah,
we'll release it on Fedora Files. World premiere, man.
yeah, yeah. We'll simulcast like your show and my show. We'll both videotape it from our perspectives, and then you'll do your perspective on your show and my perspective on it. So it's like a 2-parter.
I'm already on the
Make
hook.
it
I hadn't even started.
like
So
like it's a crossover event. Like the 2 superheroes come together, and unlike those, we'll actually get along from the beginning. It won't be like we hate each other, but now we're friends. No, we go in as friends already.
all right. Well, hopefully we'll come out as friends too, because I'm awful to travel with. Just let you know right now, we might have to
Yeah.
fight over the radio.
Okay,
So
that's fine. That's fine, man.
no, that's all right. It is all good, man, and I really appreciate you coming back on the show and tell your fantastic stories. And as I said, always a learning experience. And I look forward to seeing you again, summer
Yeah,
or
hopefully
around the summer of
soon.
2025. Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully we can do something soon, man. Hopefully we'll see each other in an event. I know the last event I was trying to get to, and then I ended up getting shanghaied and not being able to make it, so which I was really ticked off about. But hopefully this next event we were talking about, I'll be able to make it out there and see y'all. So that's my goal.
I'll see you there, my friend.
Cool.
This has been another excellent episode of Let's Find Out with Diego. Please check us out on all our social media pages, as well as on YouTube and Rumble. Like, share, and subscribe. Also, Let's Find Out is on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. Catch the show on Saturdays at 2 a.m. For more information, please visit kgradb.com. That's kgradb.com. Together, we will get one step closer to finding out. Thank you for taking this journey with me. Until next time, my friends.
Let's find out with Diego, the power of Diego Mania.
All content for Let's Find Out is property of co-host Diego and is served directly from our servers with no modification, redirects, or rehosting. All celebrity impersonators are paid performers. The impersonated celebrities do not endorse or promote any views or opinions expressed by our guests, co-host Diego, or Let's Find Out. The information shared on Let's Find Out is provided on an as-is basis, with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.